In the German capital of Berlin, you can find three massive monuments to the victorious workers and peasants Red Army of the Union of Socialist Soviet Republics. The first one was built in November 1945 with materials from the destroyed new Reich Chancellery in the Wilhelmstrasse. The second was built 4 years later in the Treptower Park. It was built to commemorate 7,000 of the 80,000 Red Army soldiers who fell in the Battle of Berlin in April-May 1945. In this video we will tell of the Tiergaten Memorial, the Treptower Memorial and the German Democratic Republic, who had the task of maintaining the monuments until October 1990, when the Federal Republic of Germany took over this task. The Soviet Army was the main armed forces of the USSR until it was dissolved in February 1992. During the Second World War, it was known by its founding name, Workers and Peasants Red Army. It was meant to be the army of the working class and the peasantry, founded during the Civil War to protect the Russian Socialist Federative Soviet Republic from the counter-revolutionary White Armies. After their victory in the Civil War, the Stalinist degeneration also affected the army. Stalin feared the army commanders and made sure that most of them were killed off in the military purges. This meant that the army was unprepared for the German invasion of June 1941. Despite the early defeats, the Red Army was able to outperform the German Wehrmacht. By 1943, the roles were now reversed, and the Reds marched on Nazi Germany. 2 years later, in May 1945, the Red Banner was raised over the Reichstag, and Hitler's empire was defeated. Over 80,000 young men died during the final battle in Berlin. To honor them, the Soviet administration in Berlin built the first memorial from the ruins of the destroyed Reich Chancellery. In the former Berlin Zoo, the Soviet administration built the Tiergarten Soviet War Memorial in November 1945. On the front of the memorial is written in Russian, "Eternal glory to heroes who fell in battle with the German fascist invaders for the freedom and independence of the Soviet Union." An English translation was provided on the side of the monument for English-speaking people. The remains of 2,000 Red Army soldiers were buried around the monument. Many were never identified. During the First Cold War, the monument was located in the British zone of Berlin. This zone would later become part of West Berlin. Anti-communist threats to it meant that British soldiers were tasked to defend the monument, together with Soviet soldiers. In 1970, a far-right German attacked a Soviet soldier who guarded the monument, wounding him. 50 years later, right-wing forces again tried to remove the monument due to the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. They failed, as the federal government of Germany has maintained that they will protect the monuments in Berlin. In 1949, the Soviet administration turned political power over to the newly formed German Democratic Republic. This state was set up by the National Front of Democratic Germany, a front organization of the Stalinist SED, the Socialist Unity Party of Germany. The GDR was meant to look neutral, non-socialist, and democratic. Stalin wanted Germany to act as a neutral buffer between the Soviet Union and the Western Allies. However, the West had already set up their anti-communist state in the Western zone. Stalin hoped that the GDR could keep up a facade of a neutral, bourgeois Germany. This facade was only dropped after 1968, when a new German constitution, a constitution of East Germany, declared that the German Democratic Republic was a socialist workers' and farmers' state. Today, the capitalist media often highlights the negative aspects of the GDR. What is ignored are some positive aspects lost in capitalist Germany today. East Germans had free health care and free education. The rents were cheap, and there was no sexualization of the human body, meaning that nudism was tolerated and even popular. These elements were overshadowed by the lack of consumer goods. Because many could watch West German television, they knew that their living standards were lower compared to the West. By 1989, the East Germans rebelled against Stalinism. During the first and last democratic election, the pro-capitalist political parties won a clear majority. East Germany allowed itself to be annexed by West Germany. Most did not understand the consequences. Capitalist reality resulted in depression and alcohol abuse for many. Four years after the end of the war, the Soviet administration and the GDR built the largest memorial in East Berlin. The Treptower Park Memorial was built for the 80,000 Red Army soldiers who had died in the final month of the war. Two styled Soviet flags built on red granite guard the entrance. They are flanked by two statues of kneeling soldiers. Beyond the flag monuments is a further sculpture. Along the axis formed by the soldiers' monument, the main area, and the flags is another figure of the motherland weeping at the loss of her sons. Before the monument is a central area lined on both sides by 16 stone sarcophagi, one for each of the then 16 Soviet republics, with a relief carvings of military scenes and quotations from Joseph Stalin, on one side in Russian, on the other side the same text in German. Eternal glory to the combatants of the Soviet Army, who gave up their lives in the battle to free humanity from fascist enslavement. Each year, the armies of the USSR and GDR would remember the soldiers of the Red Army. In October 1990, the German Democratic Republic ceased to exist. West Germany took over the responsibility for the monuments. The Soviet Union collapsed a year later. But former Soviet soldiers did not leave Germany until 1994. It was at the Treptower Park Soviet Memorial that a final parade was held. The former Soviet soldiers paraded one last time, now under the banners of Tsarism and capitalism, into an uncertain future. The German right wing has tried to vandalize this monument too. Their intolerance and hatred has failed, however. With federal protection, the monument has endured. Revolutionary socialists may oppose the Stalinist style, but we do honor the lives of these young men who died to destroy fascism in the Second World War.